All right, so this is class 17. This is probably the most attended class I've seen yet, and that's a joke. But we do have people here, so that's good. 17. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff put online for you, okay? We'll probably keep this one brief and amazing today, as brief as I can keep it. I hope it doesn't go the whole time, but I'm gonna put a bunch of stuff online for you. I'm gonna put a bunch of slides on there, and it's gonna be material for you to use as resources for the tests I'm gonna put on there. Due to lack of video attendance, I guess we'll call it, or viewership, YouTube will probably not have that as big a problem with this. There'll be some written or more quizzes. I'm going to try to pop some bigger quizzes, more quizzes, and give your midterm this week. Okay. So get some assignments out there. There's going to have to be some work being done though for those students who are not attending physically. I think we got about, believe it or not, this is a thinner class than the other one. We'll probably have less than a third of my students in this class attending face to face, and then there are the other ones who should be watching the video, but some are clearly not watching anything or doing anything. So we're going to have some other alternate assignments that are going to make sure that the students are somehow getting educated. Okay. Today we are going to have a discussion of the oh my God, say about it. Well, at least I'll have it in here. If I don't have it in there, I'll have it in the on the internet. So yeah, it looks like I left it in my office. I want to discuss the rest of the amendments to the Constitution because they are clearly important, and the first 10 were clearly important. And then you get to the next 17. What should we say is the most important thing, if I were to put, and this will probably be a test question, that all of my students should either be able to write an essay on, expound on, be articulate about, okay, is the question of what is the brilliance, and I want to put it in a positive spin, of the ability of the United States to amend its Constitution. Why is this, I think there's something underneath it. We're doing the who, what, why, when, who, what, why, when, and how, and all that. Who amends the Constitution? How do they go about amending the Constitution? Why should you amend the Constitution, right? On what grounds? How would one justify an amendment to the Constitution? I mean, if you're going to change the document, which should be very difficult to change, right? Because if it's easy to change, that means our government can change radically and quickly. And why is that not a problem? Or why is that a problem? Well, stability. We want a stable country. People do not like instability, and we were just talking about these countries that people, you know, we were talking about the people who flee from bad countries. Well, why are these countries bad?
The corruption.
The corruption in what?
The government.
In the government, absolutely. The government is so corrupt, and it is powerless once it becomes corrupt to take care, or to, as the Declaration of Independence talks about, secure the rights of its citizens. A government that's corrupt not only is unable to secure the rights of its citizens, it more often violates those rights. And those are the types of governments from which people flee. Now, we in America, times are easier and harder as far as our economy goes. Sometimes it's harder to get a job, sometimes it's easier to get a job, right? But are you worried about, your mayor being ruled by a group of people, say a drug cartel, that he can't even use his police to get rid of or fight, so to make the streets safe, because he's part of it? Are you worried about that? Hopefully the answer is no. Okay, but if it were true, now there are parts of where we live that are very bad. I would not go down there in certain parts, right? Would you agree? Like that place, River Oaks, I'd never go there. I'd jump by a bunch of rich people. Doesn't happen. I might get kicked out by some patrol guard going, "What are you doing in this neighborhood? You don't belong here. You're not where's your house?" I'm like, "Oh, but that probably wouldn't happen either, because I run down there all the time." And point being is, once you get a corrupt government, your rights are going to be violated by other citizens and by the state itself. And so that's it. So when it comes to the amendment of the Constitution, we don't want it being something that happens so quickly, because we don't like instability to begin with, okay? And if you could change the government so quickly, the motivation for that is usually power, okay? Unless the Constitution is that bad and has that kind of support to be changed, okay? But usually when there's stability and people feel safe, they tend to not want change. They want to keep things as they are, as long as they feel safe. Does that make sense to you? And so right now in America, there's a lot of it's an election year, a lot of rhetoric flying around for us to change the Constitution. Any assignment, which I will put one up, is I want to know why it's good that we should be able to change the Constitution, and on what grounds, who would do it, why we would do it. A little hint, the answer to this is all going to revolve around natural law, natural rights. It always has to point back to government securing the rights of man. So if an amendment results in power that leads to insecurity of its citizens, that is, the lack of security of their own rights, that's a bad amendment. You want to not do it. So if one were to amend the Constitution and it results in the securing of rights, not only is it justified, it should be preferred. Now, of course, what rights are we talking about? Natural rights, because you don't amend the Constitution to create rights. You amend the Constitution to secure. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Now, the first two amendments to the Bill of Rights, by the first two I mean is you got the 11th and the 12th. Both are quite procedural and have to do with the process, right, for electors. And 11 had to do with the judicial power, right? I don't want to focus on those. I want to focus on the ones that start to really make a massive change in America that illustrate that natural law principle that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, such as the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments are instituted amongst men in order to secure these rights. And what we see is America, almost 100 years after the Constitution, make an amendment in the 13th Amendment to actually apply properly that statement that all men are created equal. And where it says on page 74 of your constitutional book by your Penguin, Amendment 13, Section 1 in 1865 reads, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction." Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation, to which the commentary says this: the 13th Amendment narrowly passed Congress on January 31st, 1865, in the closing months of the Civil War. It was ratified in December of 1865 after the South had formally accepted defeat. It marked the first important step in bringing American constitutional practice into harmony with American libertarian values. I don't like that. Why? It's not necessarily true. It had to do in harmony with the natural law. Got to use the language of Thomas Jefferson. Although there had been previous private attempts to eliminate slavery, usually accompanied by promises of compensation for the value of the property lost as a consequence of the emancipation of slaves, the 13th Amendment unequivocally abolished slavery, providing for the immediate emancipation of all slaves in the United States without compensation to their owners. It also gave to Congress the power to enforce the emancipation of slaves, a power that it exercised in the Civil Rights Act of 1866. All right. So now we have slavery outlawed in the United States of America. What did that do? Well, one of the major problems that it caused was, the freedom of the slaves is a good thing, but now you have a bunch of people who have no home, have no money, and have no education introduced into the economy. All right? And so that now you've got a group of people who are going to have to industrialize themselves, educate themselves, and of course you have a lot of the Americans who are not exactly unracist. Okay? Now, racism is all over the world. Okay? America's very good about judging ourselves about racism, right? Pointing the finger, you're a racist, and all saying, no, I'm not, really, I'm not. Other people, you go to other countries, they're like, yeah, who cares, So, America's really good about that now. But back then, they had certain beliefs and certain things sprung up about, getting rid of the black population now that it's, out there and no longer of any economic benefit to the normal citizens, right? They don't have them as slaves, so what are we going to do with all these people? And so you had, eventually you had people like Margaret Sanger coming out and creating Planned Parenthood to try to get rid of the black race by breeding them out of existence, by giving them birth control, by sterilizing them, and by aborting the babies, right? And so that became an issue. And so there's all sorts of stuff. Well, another thing is, once these people are no longer enslaved, what is their status?
They're citizens. They have a right to vote now, right?
Do they?
Actually, no.
No, not yet. Which brings us to the next amendment. Amendment 14, 1868. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. Section 2. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states. Listen to this. This will be a test question. Shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for president or vice president of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of the state, or the members of the legislature thereof is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any abridged except for participation in rebellion or any or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced to the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state.
So,
Let's stop right there. What did that, let's start with section 1. Okay? All persons born or naturalized in the United States. That includes everybody born in America. That would mean slaves. Right? If you were born in America, you were born in America, and that makes you a United States citizen and of the state in which you were born. And you shall not, no state shall deprive you of any of your following rights: the right to life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness, or property, without due process of law. Meaning, if they are going to take your life, your liberty, or they're going to take your property, the government has to do what?
due process.
Justify it by use of, the law. All right. Now then it gets to section 2, which is very important. They're both important. But one gives citizenship to the slaves who are no longer slaves, recognizes it, I should say. And 2, now it says representation. Now this is important because there was a compromise made, right? Originally. And the compromise was called, the 3/5 compromise. That slaves counted as what?
3.
For every 5 slaves, you had 3, it counted as 3 voting members. That's the 3/5 compromise, right? Now, that abolishes that and turns it into 1 for 1. It's now the 1 once. Okay? So that not only gives, now that's going to give the states in which those black citizens reside more representation power, but it's also going to, grant citizenship to the slaves, former slaves. It also gives us the right to vote. Not us, I wasn't there. For who? Who gets the right to vote? all U.S. citizen males, right? But it does not mention a critical factor, which brings us to 2 years later and the next amendment, the 13th, and then the 14th Amendment, or in this case, the 15th, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. So the 13th abolishes slavery, the 14th grants citizenship, and the 15th does this. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Very, very short. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Interestingly, well, let's read the commentary here. I like to read it, see if I can comment on it. While the 14th Amendment punished states that deprive newly freed slaves of the right to vote by reducing their representation in the House of Representatives, the 15th Amendment categorically prohibits the denial of the right to vote on account of race, color, previous condition, or servitude. Notably, the amendment does not mention gender, which, to the dismay of the advocates of women's suffrage, meant that although newly freed male slaves were guaranteed the right to vote, women of all races were denied that right. So black men got the right to vote before white women did. In spite of the adoption of the 15th Amendment, the states of the former Confederacy have managed to find ways to continue to drastically curtail the right of African Americans to vote through the use of poll taxes, literary texts, and other discriminatory devices. It was not until the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that African Americans have had equal access to the polling place. So, this is one of the questions I ask my students because a lot of people think their fellow citizens are stupid, right? Like you talk to some people, they're like, Donald Trump's so stupid, you know, and they're all like, I'm like, really, is he that stupid? Is he dumber than you? You know, and they're like, because everybody thinks you're smarter than the president, right? I'm all, yeah, do you want to be the president of the United States? No. You're like, no, thank you. Neither do I, man. Neither do I. Although if somebody asked, I'd probably say, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would. But people, you know, you've heard this saying, you know, you need a license to, you know, drive, yet stupid people breed all the time, right? We allow them to breed. Well, of course we allow them to breed, right? But some people believe you shouldn't be able to vote. What, should you be able to vote if you don't know the issues? Yes or no?
No. I don't, well,
Well, how would we determine that people know the issues or not? It's true, there are a lot of people out there who are gonna vote, and they are not knowing, they couldn't articulate the two sides of the debate. They couldn't tell you why they believe, if they have any beliefs at all, but they couldn't tell you why they believe what they believe. And you go, why are you voting? Well, because somebody else told me this is the guy I should vote for, and so I'm gonna go vote for this person. Katy Perry, right, told me to vote for this person. And Madonna, if she has any influence left to anybody at all anymore. All these stars told me to vote this way because Trump's evil. Is evil? Could you even tell me what evil means? I'm not telling you to vote for Trump. I'm just saying, oh, you know, my professor told me this, right? And if there's one thing I've learned is people will allow their professors to have a lot of influence on them, which is good and bad. I mean, I suppose if you have a good professor. But I mean, you should learn to think, not, you should learn what other people think and just vote accordingly. You should learn to think on your own about it. So what should we do? Should we put out some tests, perhaps, that people have to take before they're allowed to vote? What do you think about that? Yes? You agree with that?
Yeah, but wouldn't that would like incentivize people not to vote, because it would be like a longer process.
Yeah, people don't like study to begin with. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that's fine. So you'd have lower voter turnout.
Yeah.
That's a great way to get rid of a bunch of voters you don't want to have, right?
Yeah.
You go, I don't want those. Okay, so I mean, think about it. You're gonna get rid of a whole voting block, right? What about illiterate people? People who are not able to read and write that well. Could you get rid of them? They had to take a test?
They can't take a test.
That's right.
They have like a disability, so
And
you
that
have
is-
to accommodate for them. But
Well, that is exactly what happened to the black race. They said, oh, well, we can't discriminate on on color, right? On race. That's okay. What we'll do is we'll just make a poll test. That if you can't pass the poll test, you can't vote. Oh, by the way, they can't read because they've not been educated. Uh-oh. And that was their way to keep the black people from voting. And so you go, all right, it sounds like a good idea in theory when we're just talking about intellectually lazy people, right? But what if you're talking about educationally, not intellectually, but educationally oppressed people? Then you go, yeah, and think about, are all schools created equal?
no.
Oh, and who gets to write the poll test? Right? What if you don't answer the way we politically want you to answer? Doesn't that kind of
Create like a bias.
Oh yeah. I mean, sure. So yeah, so that's not necessarily the best idea, perhaps. So I mean, but then on the other hand, you go, well, wait. So when you go, well, look, okay, so we have a bunch of people who are possibly going to vote poorly because they're easily swayed by their emotions, by sports stars and movie stars and musicians who really are not really that bright themselves, right? They hold a big microphone, but that does not mean they should speak through it. But, you know, the younger people, if you're in my class in philosophy, talking about Aristotle, and Aristotle talks about people not being able to, have a say in government because the young people are ruled by their emotions and ruled by their appetites, when in fact you should be ruled by your intellect. And so that when somebody who's very popular tells you to vote a certain way, you would not say, yeah, I want to be accepted by this person, I want to be in this crowd, I'm going to vote this way, they must be right, they're cool, right? Instead, you might say, are you correct? Should I really vote this way? Why would I vote this way? And you'd ask the appropriate questions. Well, and also, like I said, all this testing stuff sounds great when it's even across the board, we're just judging intellectually lazy people, but the problem is it had been used in the past to hold down a certain population of people, so we go, we're not gonna do that. So what we do is we have this level of acceptance of people who could be easily manipulated. And that's across the board because, the one thing we do know about, not everybody, not all races, we look the same, but we can all be equally dumb, okay? Lazy. So you get intellectually lazy white people, Asian people, black people, and so we can make use of that. And anyway, so we don't want to do that. You see what I'm saying here? Have these poll tests. Here's the thing, though, that's interesting. One of the things they're saying, what about driver's license, ID? Should we require ID at voting sites so that there's no voting fraud?
Yeah.
You're like, yes?
Well, it provides like identification, and the whole fraud thing. You don't want to have too many. Like, cause I saw somewhere in the news this guy had a bunch of voting ballots in his truck. I'm not too sure.
Oh yeah. He's filling in absentee ballots. Well, with absentee ballots, there's no ID. Or I don't even know if he was getting absentee ballots. You know how they're doing they're just sending out ballots to everybody who's registered to vote. And so what you do is you could ballot harvest. You could knock door to door and ask people for their ballot. Can I have your ballot? I'm turning it in, and I'm mailing it for people. And they say here, and you say he could change it. Okay, he could open up and change it. And that's one thing they've been doing. They've been doing what's called granny harvesting. They go to the old folks' homes and they say, "Can I help you fill out your ballot?" And then they fill it out for them. But of course, they fill it out, for their candidate. That would be one. But if you actually go to the poll and you're going to go into the booth, and they give you a number to, because you have to dial in a number, a code to open it up so that you can do your ballot, right? And that number is associated with your name. You show them an ID so that they look down on the voter roll, that they see that you had come, and they check off your name so that they know you get one vote and you got it, okay? And it was you that did it, not somebody else, right? And they make you have an ID. And you say, well, I don't have an ID. Trust me, I am that person, right? And they're like, how do we know? Should you have an ID?
Yes.
Absolutely. You're not absolutely sure. I just asked you, and now
No,
you're
I have. No, you need an ID.
It's hard. It is, as I asked you. Now I'm making you like, I don't know. Am I right? Your intuition's correct. Some people believe and are saying that this is trying to do to the black person what poll testing did to the black person, because black people are less capable of getting driver's licenses. Is that true?
ID's not a driver's license, though. You can get an identification card without needing a car.
Okay. But the claim is that black people are less able to do this stuff.
Is that true? No.
You don't think that's true?
No.
You think black people are just as capable as white people?
Yes.
What would you say to somebody who said black people are not as capable as white people?
What would I say?
Would that be a racist statement I'm asking you? To say white people are more capable of getting a driver's license or an ID than black people are? That somehow there's something wrong with black people. They're incapable of getting something as simple as a driver's license.
It's not that they're incapable. It's like they lack resources. Not enough black people have a lot of cars versus the other side.
Right. So if you don't have a car, you don't need a driver's license.
But
But
you
if you have a
can
bank account, you do need an ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you telling me that black people are incapable of getting IDs?
They're not. They can get them.
Just as capable as white people?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Some people say, I think that's quite condescending, if you ask me, to tell people that you're less likely to get an ID based on your color. That's weird to me, okay? I understand back when slavery existed and people didn't go to school, they were less likely to be able to what? Take a poll test because they couldn't read or write yet, because they had not this population. But to be able to say nowadays that you've gone to school, you have a bank account, and you have a job, but because of your color, some reason you're unable to get a driver's license or a regular ID. So to suggest that this is a means of voter suppression seems to be either unfounded or misguided in my mind. It could be worse. It could just be good old-fashioned an attempt to get rid of the voting ID laws so that more people can commit fraud. So you have two sides. You have one side saying it's racist to have ID laws, right? Which you say you believe we should have ID laws.
Yes.
And then you have the other side saying, we need to get rid of these voter ID laws because they're racist. That's what I was, so I believe it's racist the argument is racist that says it's racist. I think it's actually racist to suggest that somebody's incapable because of their race. Okay?
Because it's like you're kind of assuming.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a claim that somehow, because of your color, you're less capable of doing the same thing, simple things that white people are able to do. The simple task of getting a license or state ID, right? Simple task. Suggesting that I find it wrong. Anyway, that's the 15th Amendment, dealing with the rights of men. Why do you think women didn't have the right to vote? I mean, think about it. I mean, they weren't thinking about this at this time. I mean, but you know what suffrage is? It's the right to vote. Okay? I used to come to my class, I used to say, how many of you want to get rid of women's suffrage? And because a lot of students didn't know what suffrage meant, it sounds like suffering, right? And they're like, yeah, let's get rid of women's suffrage. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And, you know, all the women are like, yeah, we don't want women's suffrage.
But
And, you know, get rid of the women's right. Why was it that women didn't have the right to vote?
They were like seen in more of like a domestic setting than a political setting.
I like that. What does that mean, though?
They were more for housekeeping, children, cooking, laundry type thing.
That's a serious job, you know. It pays, you know, a lot of people make a lot of money doing
off
laundry nowadays and cooking and cleaning, right? They didn't have restaurants back then like we have now.
They also like raise the kids, I guess.
Yeah, we have
Upbringing.
nannies for that now. Moms don't even do that.
Generation.
Nannies are popular. So what do you do for a living? I'm a nanny. So what do you do all day? Oh, I watch the children, and I make $50,000 a year, and I teach them another language, you know. So you got these professional mommies now. So mom can go out and make money, so she can hand it all over to the nanny to do it, right? She's doing the laundry. It's a real job, right? Women were generally, you see, you're correct about domestic. Do you have any input on that?
I guess back in the time, the women were inferior to men.
Say that again?
That women were inferior to men. They were like significantly.
Inferior to men. In what way?
Like they weren't as strong as men, or they weren't.
Well, you're not.
Yeah. No, this is.
I mean, we could arm wrestle right now, and I think we'll prove that point pretty quickly.
Because of that image, they would like have them do certain jobs like that, like housekeeping, cooking.
Well, they divided up because back then they saw society as built upon the family, okay? And the family had the provider and the nurturer.
Value.
Right, so there was value to the family for sure, but the guy went out and gathered the food because he was strong enough to get it, okay? Work back then was much more manual than it is today, especially if you're working on a farm. And the woman stayed home with the kids, and she churned the butter. Have you ever churned butter?
No.
Yeah, that just looks hard. Beating this.
Hannah Montana, you remember
Tell-
Jackson?
You know, I was sitting there beating that thing until it, you know, box of cream until it turns into this hard substance. Milking the cow, and you know, I mean, real work. I mean, this wasn't like, and then of course, so I mean, the typical woman's work was real work. Okay, let's not take it away. Okay, they're not just popping a DVD in, and you know, having the kids watch Elmo, and then they put the kids to bed early on some trumped up charges so they can sit there and make themselves a mid-afternoon cocktail, right? No, I mean, they actually had real work to do. In fact, that technology didn't even exist, and they taught their kids, and they said, but families were seen as the building block of the nation. The father was seen as the head of the family, and thus the vote was more in line with the families voting, not in line with, we have a bunch of individuals that reside under the same house, everybody gets their equal vote, mom gets to cancel out dad's vote, you know? And every year they're just basically neutralizing each other's say in government every year, right?
That's funny.
Instead, it was, the man votes in the family, for the family. That's why the woman would tell him, you should stay with her family until she married a man. The man, then they'd become their own family unit. Makes sense, right? Not necessarily an inferior thing. It was more of a unifying thing. How does the family vote? Okay? It's not as though the woman and the man didn't decide how he was going to vote, although he got to pull the trigger on it. Okay? But it is a statement, the nice little test question, the black man got the right to vote before any women. Now here, you may believe that, well, that was a fun one. We had those 3 amendments, which are very important, okay? Now we have another one. 16th Amendment in 1913. A lot less popular, okay? To this day. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes. They can take your money just because you made it. Did you catch that? Do you like that?
No,
Why?
because it's the more you make, the more they take. Right?
Yes! And the more you make, the harder it is to get wealthy. It is literally, in a world, in a country that says capitalism, you can do anything in America, the more you make, the more you're making for the government. That's pretty bad. Yet, there is a whole political party dedicated to the use of this amendment, the income tax, to punish the rich, as they would call them. They always say the rich don't pay their fair share.
Do they? Don't they?
What is fair? What does it mean to be fair? What does it mean to be fair? Fair means equal pay for equal wages. Fair means paying the same thing for, should I pay more for a candy bar than you pay for a candy bar just because I make more money? No, why would I make that much money if the price just keeps going up? Right? I'd work harder to make more money so I get the same good for more money. It's like I'd be working really hard to go nowhere. That's what it seems like, I know, right? Well, that's the progressive income tax. Okay, that's the way that works. The more money you make. And they suggest, so they hate, people hate billionaires. Why do they hate billionaires? I think they're jealous of billionaires. Okay? Billionaires make a lot of money, don't they? How does a billionaire make a lot of money? usually through business. They usually own the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they own the business, usually they have employees, correct? And if you keep somebody from making money from a business, are they gonna go into business?
If you keep somebody from making money,
Yeah, if you're not allowed to make a lot of money from a business, would you go into business?
no,
Why do you go into business?
to make money.
To make money. So if you get rid of the incentive, you get rid of the innovation, correct? When you get rid of innovation, you get rid of inventions
Mm-hmm.
and actual progress towards things. So if you take the carrot off the stick, nobody's gonna be walking towards the stick or the string. So my wife works for a billionaire. This school, this building was the result of billionaires giving money. Okay? Get rid of billionaires, you get rid of a lot of stuff, don't you? 'Cause they don't just take, right?
They provide.
Yeah, we get this, by the way, according to the president of this university, and he's correct, this school lives and breathes off the oil industry. If oil is doing well, we have billionaires making money off of oil. People are gonna continue to drill oil, people are gonna continue to make money, people are gonna be able to go to school. That goes away, guess what? So too does our student body, right? Because people can't make money. So anyway, but the income tax seems to make, that's my complaint about the income tax, it seems to make becoming rich very difficult. More difficult. But why would you need an income tax? Well, what does tax do?
Provides money for the government.
Yeah, what does the government use that money for? Everything. Here it says, the 18th Amendment is the only amendment that sought to restrict the rights of the people. Did you catch that? It says, great commentary, or great notice here. He says, most of the amendments of the Constitution seek to grant specific rights, or I would say recognize rights, to the people by placing restraints on the action of the government. But this one is the only one that actually sought to restrict the rights of the people. In this case, the right to manufacture, sell, transport, this is the actual amendment that has to do with alcohol. I think I actually jumped ahead.
Skipped over 17.
I did. Darn it. Oh, that was a great one. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. I was thinking, what a great insight that this is actually getting, restricting the rights of man to his own property, the rights of his own property, right? Instead, I actually read, I wonder what he says about this, if this one actually restricts the rights, which he said that's the only one. Well, I'll go, no, it isn't. So too is 16th. Although the original version of the Constitution gave Congress the power to levy direct taxes, such taxation was only to be levied on states, the states themselves, in direct proportion to their population. Although Congress during the Civil War was able to levy a direct tax on individuals as part of wartime measure, the Supreme Court in 1895 ruling Pollock v. the Farmers Loan and Trust ruled that taxing property of individuals was unconstitutional. The 16th Amendment effectively reversed that ruling. It is silent on the rate of taxation, what the rate of taxation might be. Congress, which enacted a federal income tax in October 1913, just 7 months after passage of the 16th Amendment, opted for a modestly progressive tax rate. The rate of taxation imposed on the top taxation bracket varied from 7% in 1913 to a high of 92% in 1952 to 1953. The current rate of taxation at the top bracket is 38.6%, near the low end of that continuum. That's still a lot of money. you make $100,000 over a certain level, income level, it gets up there, cause that's, yeah, it is, because it's, the way it works is it's progressive. So let's say you get to that top tier and just for a round number, give it for every $100,000, they will take $36,000 out of that, once you get up to that top bracket. Okay, does that make sense? So it gets harder and harder. Golly, 92%, 1952 to 1953, that was probably very, very.
That's like all your money.
Well, I mean, yeah, so I mean, it gets to a point where you go, well, it's not even worth me, you know, you do, cost benefit analysis, right? Of making, doing the types of things it would take. So for every $1,000 into that tax range, you're now only getting $80 back. 92 for every 1,000, right? Yeah, something like that. Not cool. All right. Amendment 17. Let's skip that. Not gonna skip it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start there next time because I want to get go from 17 to 18 because that's where we talk about alcohol and the fact that the we'll get from there to the probably up to women being voted on, able to vote. Okay. And that will be very cool. All right. So what we want to do. Is what we're gonna end here today, and I'll talk about a couple things. Actually, I do like that commentary that I thought I made an embarrassing mistake, but I actually like it. In fact, that does, the income tax does kind of infringe on the right to property, in my opinion. I'm not saying we should get rid of it. I'm just saying it does. Okay, so, keep an eye out for another assignment, okay? Another quiz. Did you two have any problems with the quizzes?
The first one, I got like.
Not grade wise, technical. I had some technical issues. I think people waited till the last moment. So, all right, I'm gonna start putting that action out there for y'all. So, expect